All right, good morning across all video platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. We are presented today by Meriwether and Tharp. We have a very busy show, as you know, special guest, big announcement coming up before we're all said and done here. Our good friend Terence Edwards stops by. A lot to get into with Terence, including a big recruiting win that Georgia could get as soon as tomorrow. And we're going to cover a lot of bases related to the Dogs and getting ready for the upcoming season there as well, including one very important thing that I think we know about UGA, and leaning on that knowledge and leaning on the strength that comes from that knowledge, that is the bedrock for any success that Georgia enjoys here for this upcoming season. That is the topic to kind of kick things off. Two big names dominating all of that. What do you say we get ready to get it going across all platforms? DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Meriwether and Tharp, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Meriwether and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. Find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
All right, as we begin today's broadcast, let me give you a quick reminder that about 40 minutes from right now, we're going to make a big announcement, something I'm very excited about, and we're going to have a special guest on the show, and you may find out why those are related here coming up. But about 40 minutes from right now, I've got a fun, big announcement to make. Very proud to make that, and we'll welcome on a special guest to today's show. So that's a cool surprise. It takes place about 40 minutes from right now. Before that, though, I'm going to be as confusing as possible, seemingly, for like 30 seconds here, and I'm going to try not to confuse you too much, but most importantly, I'm going to try not to confuse myself because, as you're probably aware, having listened to this show maybe for a long time, I'm not always the most difficult person to confuse. I can get confused easily, so I'm going to try not to do that here right now. How many of you have ever been involved in like sort of strategy and planning for anything, right? When you're kind of either trying to come up with a game plan for a sports team or kind of come up with a business plan, whatever else, you may have heard it said that you have kind of like a collection of, sometimes you have known knowns. There are things you know. You have known unknowns. There are things you don't know. And ultimately you may even have some like unknown unknowns. There are some things that are totally mysterious. You couldn't have planned for them at all. You can't foresee them taking place. But you could be forced to deal with them. Well, in college football, we've certainly had our share of unknown unknowns. Think about the 2020 season. That was certainly an example of that. There are also some known unknowns. We know that there are some things that we don't know. For instance, a sport like college football, a league like the SEC, as physical and tough as it is, there's going to be a Georgia player who gets hurt at some point in time. There may be a couple of Georgia players who get hurt at some point in time. We know it's going to happen. We can't necessarily know who it's going to be, but we just sort of know that's going to take place. That is a known unknown. Does that make sense? All right, so for about, next couple of minutes here, I want to focus in on another part of that same idea. I want to focus on the known knowns for Georgia here this year. The things that we know, the things that we are certain of for Georgia. Because in a roundabout way, I would believe this, that the bedrock for being a successful team, the bedrock for being a championship contender, is to have a long list of things that you know, or a very solid list of things that you know. And for Georgia, maybe they've got as many of those as they should have, and maybe they don't. But here are the things that I think we can know about UGA. That Georgia has two very important leaders on its roster. One of those is on offense and one of those on defense. And for the purpose of this conversation, when I say leader, I don't mean like vocal leader, rah-rah guy, because honestly, the most vocal rah-rah leaders in the Georgia team are not the two guys I'm about to mention. When I say leader, I mean ball in their hand, game on the line, or whatever the defensive version of that is. I mean the guy expected to make the biggest play for Georgia when it matters most. And I think that Georgia's actually in a pretty good spot with its known knowns for the upcoming season. Big name on offense, big name on defense. And my kind of origin story for this topic here today is I saw where ESPN.com put out its list of preseason All-Americans. And Georgia's got a dude on defense, and Georgia's got a dude on offense. And you better believe these are the two dudes that Georgia's building its entire team around here this season. Jalen Carter, of course, is that guy on defense. That's an ESPN All-American preseason guy for the Georgia defense. And when you read the write-up, and maybe I'll put a link to this when I post the show later on at DawgNation.com, I will. One of the things that the ESPN writer who's kind of compiling all this says is Hey, on a defense a year ago that had 3 players taking the first 28 picks in the NFL draft on the defensive line, at times Jalen Carter may have been the most impressive of them. Now, listen, those of us who've been sports fans for a long time, we've been hearing this kind of stuff forever. This idea of, well, you lost a lot, but the guy who's there may have been the best of the bunch. And that almost always seems like an excessive degree of hype. That almost always seems like the kind of thing you're supposed to say because it just sort of sounds like a good story. But here's the thing to understand, and Georgia fans know this, the sort of folks outside the bubble of DawgNation, they may not know this as well as they should, is that level of praise for Jalen Carter, that level of interest in Jalen Carter as this ultra-talented player, even among a group of ultra-talented defensive linemen, that didn't just start, that conversation didn't just begin because of the guys who left, that it was going on a year ago while all those guys were still here. In fact, let me let you hear something for a moment. This is going back to prior to the 2021 season. The guy who's about to speak here is Trayvon Walker. This is the guy who would eventually become the number 1 overall pick off last year's Georgia defense. But listen to, prior to the start of last season, how enamored Walker was with the talent of Jalen Carter. So it's not a Johnny-come-lately conversation that Jalen Carter may have been the best of the bunch of those Georgia defensive linemen from a year ago. Even the guy who became number 1 overall was pretty impressed with what Jalen Carter was bringing to the table, this Trayvon Walker from last summer.
Jalen has been out there with me a lot. He's growing tremendously as a player, learning the scheme of the defense. Just growing up, and you can tell that he's really learning how to play the game of football at a collegiate level.
Growing up, learning how to play the game at a collegiate level, who would deny that's exactly what he did a season ago? So much so that now no longer in the shadow of Trayvon and Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt, now Jalen Carter gets a chance to truly show what he's all about and demonstrate what the best version of himself is. Well, it just so happens that earlier this summer, Georgia co-defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann was asked about that. Hey, what does the best of Jalen Carter look like? The guy that ESPN names as a preseason All-American. And Schumann went into some detail then about exactly what the next step for Carter's development would be. This is the Georgia co-DC from a couple of weeks ago.
I think the best version of anyone, right, is somebody who plays. When you play defensive football, you have to, play at a certain level in terms of your effort, right, and toughness, your mentality, your competitive edge, right. So the best version for him, anyone else in the front, anyone else in the defense, would be those traits: playing as hard as you possibly can with the toughness required, and competing, right. You got to win your battles, right, and that's what we'll expect of all our guys, and especially him.
So I think that's an interesting description there from Schumann about what the best of Jalen Carter might look like. However, there's one thing that Schumann didn't say there that he probably could have. That you also have a chance to be so good you make the job of the other defensive linemen around you easier, or the linebackers that play behind you, the defensive backs that play behind that if Jalen Carter goes out there and kind of gives you sort of the top-end performance as projected by an ESPN preseason All-American, then all of a sudden the job for everybody else defensively gets a little easier, and the other guys on this defense sort of already seem to know that. I thought that Zion Logue the other day, who, by the way, I also think is a very important player on this Georgia defense here this season, but I thought that Zion Logue the other day had a great take on all of this about, hey, when you're working next to a guy like Jalen Carter, what kind of pressure does that take off of you, and how much of an opportunity does that create for you? I thought Lowe gave a great answer to that the other day. Let me let you hear Zion on that topic.
I mean, I don't even think he knows. I think he's just being him, just like being that strong enforcer. Like, he's not going to be blocked. He's not going to want you to block him. He's not going to want you to touch him. So whenever he can quick swim you or get you off of him, I think that's when he's at his best.
Does it make your job easier having played beside him, knowing the attention he's probably going to get?
I think we piggyback off each other. I think it makes both of our job easier because we know where we need to be. We know what we got to do. So we can just look at each other and be like, hey, we got to do this, we got to do that. So I think it kind of plays with both hands.
So the point here on all this when it comes to Jalen Carter is that's a known for the Dogs in a year in which, UGA lost so much defensively. They didn't lose everything. You've got a guy that earned the kind of praise from the eventual number 1 overall pick like Carter did last year. You've got a guy that Zion Logue seemingly is sort of salivating for the chance to play alongside. And you've got a guy like Glenn Schumann giving a pretty sober assessment of exactly how valuable he can be. That's a known for UGA here this season. And the one thing that I've told you as a Georgia fan that you should not in any way do is do not concede the notion that Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama is definitely the best defensive player in the country this year. He may very well be, and he probably was last year. He's a terrific player. I'm not going to say a bad word about Anderson. But in terms of the overall contribution to a team, don't concede the idea that Carter is destined to be less than whatever Anderson might happen to be for UGA. That's not quite the case. That Carter starts off this year in 2022 as just as an important player for Georgia as a guy like Anderson might be for Alabama, and who knows where they rank by the end of the year. But in terms of overall value, what Carter brings to Georgia that we know of is very similar to what a guy like Will Anderson Jr. brings to the Alabama Crimson Tide. But then there's this on the offensive side of the ball. Georgia's guy that's an ESPN preseason All-American on the offensive side of the ball is tight end Brock Bowers. When you see him listed there, and he's listed alongside Jordan Addison, the wide receiver at USC. He's listed alongside the latest sort of great Ohio State wide receiver. He's listed, alongside quarterback Bryce Young, won the Heisman Trophy. I think there's this sense that, well, it's good that Bauer's name is right there, but somehow he's a lesser player than these other guys because he's only a tight end and they're wide receivers, they're quarterbacks, and they have a chance to be far more impactful than a guy like Bowers has to be, who is also one of those preseason ESPN All-American type guys. But based on what Bowers did a year ago, let's not forget, as a true freshman, based on what Bowers did a year ago, I think that whatever ceiling you want to put on his potential growth here in year two, I think you're in danger of possibly putting it too low based on everything that he showed you a year ago. In fact, let's go back to last fall and use Kirby Smart in his own words, talking about how remarkable it was from Smart's perspective that Brock was doing all the things that he was doing as a freshman in a league like the SEC, where it's not easy to be a freshman breakout star. This is great from Kirby from last fall. Take a listen to this.
It's rare to me to see a tight end and do the things he's done as a freshman. I think we're going to see it more and more with these kids coming mid-year because it helped Brock to get here and get started like he did and get that time under his belt. And just no moment's been too big for him. I mean, going back to the Clemson game, it was just like another game to him, and we knew from that game when he started out catching it, running after the catch. I mean, he makes some plays that this guy's going to be a weapon. But I can't think of any. There's been some really, really talented freshmen in our conference, but just at that position, it's kind of unique.
So I think that's really cool to hear the way in which Georgia sort of figured out that even prior to that Clemson game. By the way, nice work on video there to see some of those highlights from that Clemson game in photo form when he kind of had that breakout moment against the Clemson Tigers and what Kirby said he learned about him going into that game. Ironically, we also heard from Bowers the other day on being told that he was going to be asked to step up and kind of be Georgia's first tight end on the field and ultimately leading receiver in his first college game, kind of what that feeling was like for him. Bowers gave you some good stuff on that the other day. Here's Brock on that topic.
I was just kind of out there doing my thing every day, just working hard, and I didn't really expect much during fall camp last year. It just kind of all happened pretty fast. In the first game in the locker room against Clemson, Hartley came up to me and he was like, "Oh, you're taking the first play." I'm like, "Shoot, all right, guess ready to roll."
So he was told prior to the game, you're out there for the first snap. You're going to be on the field for that. He ultimately was Georgia's leading receiver there that day, and the rest was history. And, Michael, I was going to play a clip from Nick Saban, but let's just drop that. We don't need to do that right now. I just want to kind of simply summarize what it was that Saban also said that he had seen from Brock Bowers himself, which was, like, he's a great player. This is a great player regardless of position. And when you look at the other guys that he's kind of mentioned alongside with, as I said before, look at a guy like Jordan Addison at USC. So much more hype, so much more attention, and it's with good reason to understand that. Last year, Addison had 17 touchdown catches, but Brock Bowers had 13. Like, Brock Bowers, in terms of the impact on the Georgia offense, isn't really any less than what a guy like Addison's impact would be, whether it's playing at Pitt, where he did a year ago, or playing at USC, where he is right now. And you compare him to, like, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State. He had far more touchdown catching than he had a year ago. And the other receivers who were in that room for the Buckeyes, many touchdowns a year ago as Chris Olave did, more touchdowns a year ago than Garrett Wilson did. That's the impact that Brock Bowers was making. So once again, as I've been telling you now for quite some time, that Bowers is one of the known knowns for Georgia. He has the potential to be as dynamic as any offensive player in the country, despite the fact that he plays a position like tight end, which historically has not been that kind of position, the kind of position that creates that kind of role. But we're in a new age now, as Kirby Smart said a moment ago. Tight ends are changing. Bowers is at the forefront of that change. And to me, he's just as dynamic an offensive weapon as anybody has at any spot. So when you think about what Georgia is for the upcoming season, there are a lot of things we don't know. We don't know how certain position battles are going to be resolved. We don't know who might get hurt somewhere along the way. And who knows what other surprise may be kind of thrown at our way as fans as we watch our team play. All of that could still be somewhat mysterious. But there are a couple of things that we do know. Georgia has one of the very best defensive players in the entire country in Jalen Carter. That's the building block for that side of the ball. Brock Bowers is the version of that for the offense there as well. And honestly, that's a pretty good place to start towards trying to remake a championship roster once again for 2022. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. And glad to have you with us, no matter how you get to us today, live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We're on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960. The Ref are available as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. Just happy to have you on board for all of that. And a huge thanks to our friends from Merriweather and Tharp for being with us here as well. Of course, if you're watching a video, you see that DawgNation Duck Hunt logo right there on the front of the desk here today. And I'll remind you that our friends at Merriweather and Tharp, big part of our DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate coming up next Saturday. Hopefully you've got a chance to get your tickets for that there too. But one way or another, we're going to be having a great time. Our friends from Merriweather and Tharp are going to be with us there for that. Also, though, sometimes in life, the things aren't quite so much fun, and they're not quite as cool as college football tailgates. I do get that. Maybe you don't really quite feel like doing that right now. And Merriweather and Tharp understands that there, too, because you may be going through a divorce. And in the audience the size of ours, we talk about tens upon tens of thousands of people who tune in each and every day. Statistically speaking, they're just a large number of you who've either experienced this before. You might experience this sometime in the future. You may be kind of feeling like you're about to go through it right now, and that's a tough thing. And I can't quite make it go away for you. I can't make that disappear. I can't wave a magic wand here. But what I can do is give you a strong recommendation. That is, hire Merriweather and Tharp to be your advocate to walk with you through this, because doesn't it kind of feel good to have somebody who's going through it with you? And that's what Merriweather and Tharp will be. One of their attorneys, their team of folks there, going through this with you, helping point you towards a much happier future than maybe the current present that you're dealing with right now. So I'm going to invite you to check out their website. It's theatlantadivorceteam.com, theatlantadivorceteam.com. Browse through the free resources, blog posts, podcasts, things like that. Come up with a plan. It's important to have a plan. And Merriweather and Tharp can help you create that plan that makes sense for you, that's specific to your circumstances. Have the free initial consultation with one of their attorneys. And then, as I said, make the decision to hire Merriweather and Tharp to handle your divorce situation. It's theatlantadivorceteam.com for more on that. Theatlantadivorceteam.com. Quick reminder that we're 20-ish so minutes, maybe 25 minutes away from a big announcement and a fun special guest on the program here today. We'll look forward to doing that. Also, our good friend Terence Edwards, as always, here on Thursdays coming up as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. Don't forget, we got a great event at Marlowe's a week from now, too. We'll tell you more about that here coming up in a moment. I don't know if you can tell, but we have a lot going on here around Dog Nation here right now. So we're very excited about all of it and very excited about doing Around the Doghouse here right now, presented today by SERVPRO. And we're doing a cool new thing at DawgNation.com. Now, I don't write a ton at DawgNation.com, and part of that's because I can barely read. But when I do get a chance to write, I always really enjoy that. They're kind enough to let me do that from time to time. And one of the things that they're letting me write here right now is we're all taking turns on a brand new kind of like Q&A feature, I guess you'd call it that, questions and answers. We're calling it Gimme 5, where basically it's 5 questions and you answer the questions. You try to give the best answer you possibly can. I really got some great questions. I asked for some questions a little earlier this week. I got some great ones. And I thought, some of these are so good that if I don't have room for all of them there at DawgNation.com, maybe I can bring a couple of these onto the show and kind of just find a way to try to answer as many of these questions as I can. And who knows, I'll probably end up squeezing in more than 5 questions to my Gimme 5 even there as well. I'm not always the most compliant person in the world. But the point here is I wanted to address one of these questions really quick at part of Around the Doghouse presented by SERVPRO, because I think it's a really good one. Let me show you this on the screen. This is what somebody asked. This is Dustin, who goes by a guy named Dustin on Twitter, which is kind of a funny handle. He says, what's the biggest obstacle of repeating for Georgia outside of Alabama? Isn't that a great question? that it's easy to understand, okay, well, you got the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's a team you split with a year ago. It's a team that in previous matchups, road trip in 2020, SEC title game in 2018, national championship game at the end of the 2017 season, that Alabama has proven to be a very big stumbling block for UGA. So if you assume that's true again here this year, besides that, what else is there? And I wanted to give a really good answer to this question because I think it's a really good question. And here's the answer I've kind of come up with. I don't believe it's any specific individual team. I've told you before, I don't think Oregon's good enough to play Georgia close. I just simply don't. There are teams that could play Georgia close, but in the circumstances that Georgia's going to find itself next Saturday, I don't believe that Oregon's one of those teams. I also don't believe that any of Georgia's regular season opponents are likely to play it close. And that could be that you may be surprised in a game and a road trip ends up being a little bit of a house of horrors and you have to sort of escape with a win. College football kind of has a way of providing that to you from time to time. But ultimately, I don't know that I necessarily see a road game that's all that big of a regular season game that's all that big of a likely obstacle for UGA. So this is the answer that I've kind of come up with. And if you have a better answer, send it to me at DawgNation Daily, and we'll see if we can keep this conversation going. That's DawgNation Daily on Twitter, of course. I think the biggest obstacle to UGA right now is the perception that it's less than Alabama and Ohio State. When you see such unanimous agreement in all of the way too early preseason rankings, the official preseason polls that have just come out, AP and Coaches Poll, when everybody seems unanimous in their agreement that Georgia is behind Alabama and Ohio State, there is a little bit of a perception problem there. So it seems likely that if Ohio State keeps winning, it'll stay ahead of UGA. And Alabama, who legitimately is a true obstacle to Georgia, that these two teams split a year ago, it's quite possible that in two matchups this year they could split again. This is a fair fight, even matchup, and you can't be guaranteed of beating a team like this twice because that's how good Alabama is. So for Georgia, who kind of starts the year off in sort of a perception disadvantage of only third best team in the country, and I use air quotes around only, but only third best team in the country, I think you have to perform in such a way this year that makes it obvious that you're going to be included in the college football playoff regardless of what happens in December or any other point in time, after that. That means if you have a chance to kind of beat up on Oregon and hold them to a low score total, you absolutely go out there and finish the job there on that. Regular season games, the way that Georgia kind of marched through the regular season, just laying waste to every opponent, you sort of need to do that again here this year. You can't mess around. You can't play around. You can't be disinterested. You can't be bored. You can't be biding time, waiting for December. You've probably got to play most of your regular season games with a level of focus because here's what we know. And this is human nature. There isn't an anti-UGA bias, but there is an anti-boredom bias that exists. The powers that be would love there to be a little shakeup in who makes the college football playoff. So if you had a reason to exclude Georgia, the powers that be might take that reason. They might take that opportunity. Once again, it's not a conspiracy. They're not anti-UGA. They simply want college football to be more interesting than a sport where you can easily name the 4 playoff teams prior to the year beginning. So Georgia sort of fights against that human nature to kind of see flaws in UGA because it would be boring to have a repeat champion. And therefore, you have to remove all doubt. You have to play in such a way that doesn't leave any discussion for who should be in the playoff. Georgia did that a year ago. Pretty much everybody said going into the SEC title game that no matter what, both these teams would be in the playoff. That is what occurred, and ultimately Georgia won the national championship. It might have to travel a similar path again here this year, but establishing the correct perception in order for that to be true is going to take some work during the regular season. That is Around the Doghouse. It's presented today by our friends at SERVPRO. And listen, Georgia's got a big job to do here this year, cleaning up maybe reputation after losing so much talent from a year ago. But you're clean up wherever you are, at your home, at your business, your commercial real estate place. Your cleanup may be even more substantial than that. You may have dealt with a fire. You may have dealt with some water damage. You may have some real serious cleanup work that needs to be done. And if that's the case, you want the folks at SERVPRO on the job because their restoration specialists can get it all put back together for you, all cleaned back up, and make it look like it never even happened. That's what SERVPRO is all about. Plus, all of their franchises are independently owned and operated. Now, why does that matter? Well, let me tell you why it matters. If you've got a big cleanup, especially for your house where you live or your business where you make your living, well, you've got a lot of stake in the outcome on that. And if you're dealing with a franchisee that owns their own SERVPRO franchise, they've got just as much of a stake in that outcome as you do, because satisfied customers is how they make their living. So that's what it's all about when it comes to SERVPRO. Restoration specialists doing great cleanup work for you. And you can find out more by checking out SERVPRO.com. That's SERV, SERVPRO.com, and take care of all of that here today. All right, so a lot to do for us as it relates to these Georgia Bulldogs. Let's get ready to get rolling with that right now. We do it every single Thursday. It's a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. Let's welcome Terence Edwards here to our program right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
We will say hello to Terence Edwards here on DawgNation Daily in our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. And, of course, we're looking forward to being at Marlowe's next Thursday. We'll tell you more about that here coming up in a moment. But, Terence, I thought about you a little bit this past week. When we heard from Kirby Smart the other day, he gave what I thought was a pretty positive update on Eric Gilbert. And, you know, we've obviously leaned on your relationship with Gilbert a lot during the offseason, but here we are getting close to the start of the year. And it seems like, you know, Gilbert's kind of where he needs to be in terms of, you know, being a big part of the story here this year. I know he's going to be sporting a brand new jersey number, which is kind of cool. But how did you feel about what you heard from Kirby the other day on Eric and kind of where things stand with Gilbert as he gets ready to make a much anticipated return to the football field?
Very positive. You know, was very happy that he was more concerned about Eric's mental health than his football ability. And we all know that his football abilities is on point, but we just need the team to make sure the young man's mental state of mind is sharp, just like we want his football abilities to be sharp.
It's one of those things, Terence, where Kirby's probably actually a little bit different than some people may assume that he is, because he's obviously a tough, hard-driving guy. But the fact of the matter is, he does seem to get that part of it, doesn't he? I mean, he does seem to understand the mental challenges that, whether it be Gilbert or anybody else that we're all dealing with, he seems to get like the team chemistry part of this and the sort of spiritual development of the player part of this. You know, as much as he kind of comes across this sort of like, you know, hard driving, run it in the red type guy, the sort of people part of football actually seems to come pretty naturally for him. As a coach yourself, do you see that when you look at Kirby?
I think so. I mean, one of the first things that Kirby and I spoke about when it was a possibility that Eric can go to UGA is just more about let's get the young man right. We know football would take care of itself, but he's more concerned about Eric, the person, and not Eric, the football player. So he made a conscious effort to stand behind the young man and help him off the field, because he knows that the talent that he has is undeniable, but he's also really worried about the young man mentally. So that's why, Kirby and the Georgia did everything they could to help the young man become who he is today. And he still has a rough road. When I mean a rough road, you know, every day is a challenge. It's a different challenge. And he's fighting it. He's fighting that every day, just like he's attacking schoolwork. He's attacking practice. He's attacking his mental health just as well as he's attacking every aspect of his life. Speaking
of coaches, I saw where ESPN the other day had some nice things to say about Brian McClendon as kind of a coach on the rise, future head coach, and obviously he's back here at UGA as wide receivers coach. That's a position that you know well, and you know McClendon well too. Like, what do you think that Georgia gets from McClendon at this stage of his career? One of those guys that could be on his way to something else bigger sooner rather than later, but here at UGA and looking to make an impact with these wide receivers, how valuable do you think a guy like McClendon can be as we get ready to start this season for the Dogs?
It's very valuable. I mean, when you got two guys that's very respected as Kirby and as B-Mac, and you think about those are two Georgia guys, so this is special for them. So they're going to do everything in their power to make their school the best it could be. And you know, we all know B-Mac is a rising star in the rank. But the thing is that I've heard from the players that he brings respect and leadership to that room. So that's his biggest thing. He commands that room, and those players respect him. They understand that in the meeting rooms, in the weight room, on the field, you know, you're going to have to hear from Coach B-Mac, and he respects and has that command from his players, and that's why everyone loves him so much.
How tough is the job that he's facing right now? I'm not talking about getting ready to play Oregon. I'm talking about kind of trying to figure out. I mean, I've heard some chatter about this behind the scenes about like who your top 6 guys are. You know, who are the guys that you would take with you on a 70-man travel roster. You know, where is the sort of pecking order of these receivers right now? It seems like, kind of prior to the game prep for Oregon, a lot of this is trying to figure out where your roster sort of shakes out. How tough of a job is that for a guy like McClendon, or all the coaches who are sort of going through that at the moment, trying to figure out, like what their true pecking order really is?
I say this all the time to my players. It's not really that tough, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, the players determine the depth chart, not the players. Because you're going to go out, and if you're doing everything that you are asked to do, the cream will rise to the top. So it's on the players to go out each and every day to attack the day and try to win each day. And then usually the cream will rise. So it's not about how the coaches set the depth chart. The players set the depth chart. But how they practice, how they attack the meetings, schoolwork, all aspects of being a college student. So the cream will rise, but I think the depth that people are not giving this Georgia team enough credit for at that position. We have some guys, in my opinion, to go out there and make some plays. Are they elite? No. Or are they very good college football players that's going to help us win games? Yes. So I like the room. BMAC and that staff has a tough task to see who's going to be the top six, but the top six usually shakes itself out by their performances.
I want to lean on your experience as a former player here in a moment. Before that, though, let me remind folks, this is our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with Terence Edwards here right now, and we are really excited about 1 week from tonight being at Marlowe's Tavern in Dunwoody for our great season kickoff event there. And I want to give you all the details about this. It's September 1st, 6 p.m., 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway. That's the address, 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway, for a huge event to kick off the season at Marlowe's Tavern. Got all kinds of fun stuff going down for all that. Some of that you'll be hearing more about. But for now, just know Thursday, September 1st, 6 p.m. for the big event at Marlowe's in Dunwoody, 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway. Terence, let me ask you this. You're obviously a player or have been a player, and you know the grind that it takes on your body, and you get sometimes very serious injuries that may keep you out for a long time, but sometimes it's sort of like the minor nagging things that just make it hard to be at your best, or maybe it takes you off the practice field more often than you want to be. It seems like Kendall Milton is dealing with some of that, a hamstring issue that's kept him off the field for the last 2 Saturday scrimmages, which are obviously very important in terms of, getting ready for the upcoming season. For those of us who haven't kind of been in that role of, taking care of your body and trying to get rid of a nagging thing like this, what is Milton able to do on that, if anything? Is this one of those deals where you sort of have to hope it kind of loosens up and you're able to kind of go out there and do it? Or are there things a player in this spot can do to kind of help make that recovery a little easier? We know they go get treatment, but specifically, sort of what does that mean in terms of trying to work your way back to a football field as a former player?
Man, it's tough, but I think, Ron Corson and the athletic training do a great job getting these players ready, keeping the players ready. But in his case, he just had these small nagging injuries that I think that have limited him to what his real potential can be. And it's an old saying in football. I mean, if you walk into the season unhealthy, you're gonna limp out the season unhealthy. So it's not a good look for any player to go into the season with small nagging injuries, because those injuries are not going to get any better throughout the season because you're going to be playing. But he just got to continue to stretch, do everything in his power to continue to get those muscles and limbs strong. The strength and conditioning staff as well plays a part into this. And now just hope and pray that, that nothing else happens. But I don't want to say it's bad luck, but there's some things that I don't know. He's a big man and has a lot of muscles, and that also tends to lead to a lot of bumps and bruises as well, pulls. So just hopefully, Ron and his staff get the young man healthy enough to go and be the best version of himself, because I think that Kendall Milton is very immensely talented, and he's a big kid with vision and power, and we're going to need his running ability to get where we need to go.
I think you're right about that, Terence. I think that's well said. Hey, before we let you go here, I know you said last week that right now, you want guys focused on their high school seasons, and you're kind of focused on your season there at Milton, but still doing some work there on the weekends with the Terence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy. So for folks who want to get more of that and, just even connect with you online and kind of find out about some of the things you got going on, how can they connect with you on social media?
right now, I'm going to let you know where I'm at right now. Let all the fans. I take my time out. The Milton program, we're playing up in Ohio this weekend.
Wow.
So I'm right now at the Football Hall of Fame in Canton.
Are you serious?
I had an opportunity. Yes, I'm here right now. I had an opportunity to see Champs Buff, Richard Seymour's locker, and all his new assignments. So I take my time out to get away from it. But actually, at this point, I'm in Canton, Ohio, at the Football Hall of Fame. So, yeah, the Milton program, man, we're doing big things right now.
I tell you what, that's an amazing trip right there. I've never been before. Is this your first time to be in Canton for the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
My first time, and it's an amazing experience.
Well, listen, make sure you post some pictures of that because I'd love to see them. That's really good stuff. Well, have a great time doing all of that. We'll check you out online at Terence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy, and we will look forward to talking to you back here as a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update again very soon.
Thank you.
Good stuff there from Terence Edwards.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, so good stuff there from Terence Edwards. Appreciate him being a part of what we're doing here today. Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update, always a big part of that each and every Thursday. And don't forget, as I've been saying, we're about 7 minutes away now from big announcement, special guest. So we're going to do that here coming up in a few minutes, and it might just tie into what we were just talking about there with Terence, the big event coming up at Marlowe's Tavern next Thursday. Am I giving you enough hints on all of this? We're a few minutes away from doing all of that. We will get ready to do that then. So that's on the way here coming up. Before that, though, let's get ready to go cruise around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And before we do that, let me just also say this there as well. One of the things I was going to talk to Terence about, we just sort of ran out of time, was a little bit. Another kind of wide receiver note to be aware of, Anthony Evans, receiver out of Converse, Texas, a 4-star wide receiver out of the state of Texas. He's making a commitment announcement tomorrow. We're going to get a little bit of a preview with Terence there on that. We just sort of ran out of time for that today. So keep your eyes out for Evans, the 4-star out of Texas, making a commitment decision tomorrow. Jeff Sintel will be back with us on Friday, and we'll do plenty more of that related to Evans tomorrow. So keep your eye out for the 4-star wide receiver. Obviously, Georgia may be on a little bit of a commitment watch tomorrow, so we'll have more on that as we kind of roll into the Friday and the end of the week situation there here around DawgNation Daily. But for now, cruise around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Obviously, a great time to be on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. Our friend Jessica Slater going to help you out with that. You can find her online, dreamvacations.com/jslater, or you can give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. And when you talk to her, here's what I want you to tell her. That BA said that any Royal Caribbean cruise vacation I take ought to include a stopover at Perfect Day Coco Cay. Now, the truth is you got all kinds of great itineraries for Royal Caribbean. Maybe you want to go to Alaska, somewhere like that. But for me, when I'm searching my Royal Caribbean cruise vacation, that's what I'm always sort of starting with. Who's going to Perfect Day Coco Cay? Who's giving you that private island experience right there in the Bahamas with the chill side and the thrill side? Tallest water slide in North America. You get the chill slide that's kind of got the largest, freshwater pool in the Bahamas. I'm talking about this thing is a behemoth, and it's so much fun. You get the DJs going. You got everybody having a great time. It's just a great experience, and it's a part of the great experience you're going to have when you book your own Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. I got one coming up this winter. I got one coming up early 2023. So we're getting ready for ours around here, and you better get ready for yours there too. We're going to roll through a football season, and then we're going to be back on the seas again with Royal Caribbean. I can't wait for that. Obviously, Jessica Slater from Dream Vacations helping me out with that. So check her out online, dreamvacations.com/jslater for more on that. All right, a couple of SEC through stories here as we're cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Starting with this, you saw Carnell Tate a couple of months ago make a commitment decision to Ohio State. Ohio State very frequently wins with big-time wide receivers. This no different there on that. But there's been some chatter as of late about a little bit of buzz here still remaining for Tennessee. That seemingly here Tennessee may be getting back into the recruitment for Tate, and there's a chance that the Vols could end up flipping Tate away from Ohio State. This is one of those things that from a recruiting standpoint, and when it comes to the rumors of NIL, things like that, just to be frank, the Tennessee sort of seemingly been on again, off again. It's like they have the big, win with Imalay with the quarterback, and then they kind of go quiet and sort of lay dormant for a while, and then so lo and behold, they sort of pop up and win again. It seems like, they've had a little bit of traction here and there with this class, and obviously Tate would be a big win for sure, obviously playing in the Josh Heupel offense, which is certainly friendly for quarterbacks and wide receivers. So keep your eye on Tate and Tennessee here. there's been a little bit of buzz. I think a lot of this generated from Chad Simmons from On 3. I think he kind of had some of this, but it's been kind of on social media and whatnot. So keep your eye on Tate and maybe a little bit of late action from Tennessee as it relates to his recruitment. Speaking of wide receivers, somewhere Nick Saban this week was talking about Tyler Harrell. Harrell is the receiver that Alabama has taken as a transfer from Louisville. Obviously, Jermaine Burton, the more high-profile wide receiver to transfer into the Alabama program. But in the case of Harrell, that's another guy who actually had similar numbers to Burton a year ago, transferring in there as well. And I guess Harrell's been a little bit banged up. Saban kind of acknowledged that. And also was somewhat tepid, to just be honest, about the way in which Harrell's kind of worked his way into the situation here at Alabama thus far. Saban didn't say anything bad about him necessarily, but it was one of those things of, hey, we're just going to be working to kind of get him up to speed to sort of be where he needs to be. That's the basic nature of the quote here. I just think this once again serves as a reminder that for all the high-profile transfers that Alabama has taken, for all the high-profile transfers they've kind of brought into the program, it is not obvious how all these guys are going to work. There have been some big questions asked about a guy like Eli Ricks, the defensive back. Saban's not exactly overflowing with praise for the early work on Harrell here, who's obviously been a little bit banged up, so don't necessarily blame him for it. But this is still an experiment. This is still Nick Saban trying to find out how many different guys from different places can I bring in under the same umbrella, and how much team chemistry can I create with them. This is not a given as of yet that this is all going to work out. Maybe some of the words from Saban about Harrell kind of serve as a reminder of that. And then one more thing, and then we'll get ready to bring on a special guest to make a very big announcement for you. Interesting development coming out of Auburn here, where we told you the other day that it seems like at one point in time it seemed likely that Zach Calzada was the next starting quarterback of the Auburn Tigers. And since then, that story has completely fallen apart. Whether it was ever true seems hard to know now, but it seems like it's probably not true at the moment, where it seems like TJ Finley is actually the guy who is going to end up winning that starting quarterback job for the Auburn Tigers. He seems likely to do that. And then some of the other chatter that's coming out as of late is that the other guy who's made a little bit of a push here is Robbie Ashford. Now, Ashford's a little bit of a favorite son there because he's from the state of Alabama as original high school recruit. But it seems like it could be Ashford, it could be Finley, and a guy like Calzada may actually be more of the number 3 guy right now, at least based on some of the current rumors that exist around there on that. So I wanted to make you aware of that. We're going to make that cruising around the SEC, presented by Royal Caribbean. And here on the show, as promised, we're going to get ready to make a special announcement and bring on a special guest. Let me make the special announcement here first. So coming up next Thursday, we're going to be live at the Marlowe's Tavern in Dunwoody for our big season kickoff event. We are so excited about this because we have not been to a Marlowe's Tavern in quite some time, and we're looking forward to being there 1 week from now on September 1st at 6 p.m., and we're inviting all of you to be there with us, and many of you have said you do plan on being there. Well, guess what? In addition to the entire, collection of Dog Nation folks, we're also going to welcome in a special guest there that day there as well. How about former Georgia quarterback, the beloved figure on this program, Jake Fromm, going to be with us at Marlowe's in Dunwoody 1 week from now. And not only that, Jake, good enough to join us here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp here as well. First of all, Jake, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on the show here today. Thank you for being with us at Marlowe's Tavern next week. I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to catching up with you again and allowing a lot of Georgia fans to come by and say hello to you. I really appreciate you making time for us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Really look forward to Marlowe's. Going to be a great time, and be fun to see a lot of Georgia fans out and having a good time.
And I think we're all curious, obviously we've heard kind of the stories of kind of where you had to watch the national championship game from and kind of your experience there, seeing your alma mater kind of go through all of that. But now that you've had a little time to kind of bask in that moment and see what Georgia did, what's it like to think of Georgia as the reigning national champions now? I know how much that must mean to you and how much that you enjoyed kind of seeing all that take place here over the course of the last few months.
Yeah, no, it's definitely crazy to think about. One, it's a huge blessing, but two, it's a high level of expectations going into this next year. So look forward to the guys, going out and showing the rest of the country that they're a really good football team again this year, and and hopefully they'll make it back.
When you guys got so close in 2017, like one of the things I remember Kirby Smart saying, and he said this of the seniors at the time, but it obviously applies to all of the guys who are on that roster, about how, that group of players, including yourself, was kind of a building block for what would come in the future. That's not exactly the words that he used, but he said something kind of similar to that that whatever this program becomes, it sort of started with those first couple of teams, and obviously that big breakthrough season you were part of there as a freshman. As a player that did get close to it and sort of laid the foundation for what happened after you left, do you get the sense of that do you get that sense of pride that comes from knowing that, hey, we kind of started that culture of winning and eventually passed the baton to guys like this who sort of took it to that next step? Like, how much of a sense of pride do you have about the fact that you were a part of a program and a process that built itself and kept on building even after you had moved on to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think it starts with buy-in with a really good group of guys who are determined, all have the same goal, and really good football players as well. So, what we were able to put together and continue to kind of build on throughout the years, I definitely think it helped a little bit. And huge congrats to those guys who finally put it over the top and was able to put together a really good football team and schemed up some good X's and O's and beat a really good team in Alabama.
When it comes to the role that Stetson Bennett kind of finds himself in a little bit this year, it kind of reminds me a little bit of you in 2018 when, so as a starter in 2017, you're doing everything for the first time, and you have a very successful year, and obviously Georgia wins the SEC and almost wins the national championship, thrilling Rose Bowl. But for you, all of that was, hey, first road game, first SEC game, first start overall, which, comes at Notre Dame, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. And then in year two, in 2018, all of a sudden, it's not the first time anymore. All of a sudden, now you're sort of doing something for the second time. And I can only imagine, having not played the position, but I can only imagine it had to be more comfortable. Now, Bennett started some games in 2020, but ultimately being treated as the starter in 2022, a very different scenario than he had this time a year ago. Based on your own experience as a quarterback, how much more comfortable would you expect a guy like Stetson to be, just knowing that he gets to be treated as the starter this year and he doesn't have, I guess, the thought of, even trying to sort of fight and win that job week after week? Like, how much more comfortable do you think a guy like Stetson can be because of the circumstances that he's now facing?
Yeah, like you said, me and Stetson going into that year, there's a lot of firsts going on, but going into that, that second year, there's definitely a lot more comfort, but also at the same time, there is a new level of expectations, a new level of pressure to be able to do everything you did last year and then more. So, it's going to be tough to top, what they did last year, but I think Stetson's doing a good job of handling himself in the right way and leading. And we'll see when it comes fall. And it really is. You do have a level of comfort, but what comes with it is a lot more expectation.
One of the things we've all heard stories about are those like practices leading into the Rose Bowl where you obviously were going on to what was going to be one of the great wins in UGA history, and you were a huge part of that. But one of the things we've also heard is, hey, Stetson sort of playing the Baker Mayfield role and working as the scout team quarterback, that he really made a lot of fans for himself among your fellow teammates because of that. What was it like knowing Stetson kind of back then when he was kind of an unheralded walk-on and a guy that I guess was trying to sort of show what he was all about at practice? What did you learn from him in those moments and those stories that we've kind of all heard second and third hand? What was it like for you to kind of experience those in person?
Yeah, what makes Stetson great is, he doesn't change. Stetson today is the same Stetson that he was, back then practicing for the Rose Bowl week. He hasn't changed. One word I would describe Stetson is unbothered. It doesn't matter how good he's playing, how bad he's playing. It doesn't matter. He's unfazed by the outside noise, and he's going to beat to the sound of his own drum, and he's going to go out and play football.
I think unbothered is a great word because I think you would probably agree that it's one thing to have the talent necessary to succeed, but to have also, I guess, the ability to sort of block out the outside noise and remain unbothered. I think it's probably pretty easy for a lot of folks, even when they are really talented, to become bothered, to become distracted by the fact that even if they're saying good stuff about you, it's probably just weird to have people talking about you all the time. Shows like this, constantly talking about, what you have going on. That's probably pretty different for, young men who not all that long ago were like in high school. To have the attention that you get as an SEC quarterback, that's got to be a little bit of a strange life to find yourself in from time to time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's a lot thrown at you real fast, and I think it's a testament, just to his parents, the way he was raised, and being able to handle all of it in a really good way, that benefits not only himself but others as well.
I want to let you get going with the rest of your day here in a moment. Let me just get a couple quick things before we let you go. You didn't really play in the NIL era. That kind of came along after you're done. What we're going to do with you next Thursday at Marlowe's, the kind of thing that you're only experiencing kind of your post-college playing career life. Do you think you would have enjoyed NIL? Would you have enjoyed making these kinds of appearances while you were a player? Is that the kind of thing that would have been too distracting for you? What do you think your life would have been like had you been a college player a couple of years later, and all of a sudden we're seeing your face on billboards and doing all that kind of stuff? I guess the money would have been good, but how about the experience in and of itself? Do you think you would have liked the NIL world?
I don't know. It's such a loaded question, and obviously I didn't have to go through it, so there's a whole lot of what ifs in this scenario. But I don't know. I do think I would have benefited greatly, money wise from it. But I do think it does come with a lot of distractions, and it's a different game as far as the football and the recruiting aspect of it, and. There's just a lot going on, and a lot we're still learning about it. So, really tough to say, and it's a huge what-if scenario.
Well, Jake, I tell you, I'm so excited about next Thursday. Marlowe's Tavern is going to be such a great time. Obviously, you've got so many fans here around DawgNation. They love the moments that you were part of at UGA. They love the stories that you can tell about that. Certainly, they're very proud of what you've kind of gone on to do since then there as well. So thank you so much. Looking forward to it. Thanks for being here today, and I'll just invite everybody to join us next Thursday. That's September 1st, 6 p.m., 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway for Jake Fromm with DawgNation there at the Marlowe's in Dunwoody. Jake, have a great day, and we'll look forward to speaking to you next week.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and see you there.
Great stuff there from Jake Fromm. What a thrill it is to have him on the program today, and what a thrill it is to have him. That's our special guest. That's our big announcement. Coming up a week from now at the Marlowe's in Dunwoody, we will welcome in the great former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm, who was a part of one of the most memorable games of all time for UGA, and 100 years from now, that'll still be true, in that Rose Bowl against Oklahoma. And obviously a guy who kind of knows what it takes to be what Stetson Bennett is right now, a quarterback in the spotlight, a quarterback who's dissected and discussed every way you can be. Jake clearly has a lot of insight on that, and I'll just tell you this really quickly, we'll get ready to wrap up. Talking to Jake, it's hard not to remember that first start. This big event in Notre Dame. We had, at the time, it was the biggest event we'd ever done at DawgNation. All these people, traveling to South Bend, and Jake Fromm right there in the center of all of that. And in one hand, it kind of seems like it was yesterday, and on another hand, it kind of seems like it was a million years ago. That's just kind of the way that time works from time to time. But here we are all these years later. A lot has happened since then, and Georgia finds itself in a really good spot as Kirby Smart moves into his 7th year, and the legacy that Smart's putting together at UGA. Obviously, Jake Fromm is a very big part of that, and so to have him a week from now at the Marlowe's Tavern in Dunwoody is going to be a great experience. And if you were on your way to Marlowe's, you have another reason to be there. And if you're just now hearing about this event, trust me when I tell you, it's going to be one of the most fun things that DawgNation's done in quite some time. Hanging out with Jake Fromm next Thursday at the Marlowe's Tavern in Dunwoody. I cannot wait to be able to do that. What a great way to finish off today's show. So from a golden shoe standpoint here, let's go ahead and get ready to do that, because certainly Jake Fromm had some big moments against those lousy, stinking Gators, so we can probably count Jake among the Gator hater faithful here. This takes a little bit of explaining, because there was this picture for Florida the other day that went like crazy viral. And if you're watching a video, you obviously see this. This is the Florida team picture. And the thing that everybody notices is that there are more people that are not football players than there are football players in this picture. And one of the tweets about it said, when the coaching store has a BOGO sale, meaning buy one, get one free. Basically, Florida's got just too many coaches, too many analysts. It's just kind of a crazy looking picture because of how much the support staff overwhelms the players, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I will say this as a football team, if you're trying to diminish the role that your players play in your team picture, that may not say very much about your players this upcoming season, but ultimately I don't really have a problem with the picture necessarily, although it is just kind of funny to see. So we'll give Florida its own golden shoe today for a very odd team picture, even so much that Billy Napier even was asked about it the other day in one of his press conferences. But nonetheless, we'll make that our golden shoe for today, and we'll remind you, lousy, stinking Gators, I don't care how many support staffers they have, it'd take them all to count up the number of days since they've won a national championship. It's been 4,000 977 days since they have done that. And our Gator Hater Countdown, how about 65 days from right now? Dogs back in Jacksonville getting a win once again. Boy, doesn't that sound good to say? Doesn't it feel good to think about? It's our Gator Hater Countdown. We'll see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs, and you'll bask in the glow of 65 days from right now for the Dogs and the Gators. And we'll take your comments here across all platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, DawgNation.com. Good to have DawgNation.com up and running again here today. Also, going to pat ourselves in the back for a couple of things here really quickly. Really excited about Jake Fromm. Great to have him on the show. Great to have him at Marlowe's next week. Also, a little bit of a pat on the back for the fact we actually concluded today's show prior to 11 a.m., which is a huge, huge change for us here. So hopefully we didn't go at too breakneck of a pace to get that done, but we did nonetheless. So since the DawgNation.com wasn't working yesterday, I'm going to start on DawgNation.com for these comments here today. Matt Rukavina says, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jake as a graduate assistant for Kirby here in the next year or two. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things I think we can have a chance to kind of get into with Jake a little bit. And on a longer interview, maybe we would have. This is probably something more from Marlowe's next week. You know, do you want to be a broadcaster? Do you want to be a coach? Coaching's not for everybody. And for some people, and I don't know if it's for Jake or not. I don't know. I think that Jake right now is kind of focused on, sounds like he's going to school and getting, kind of thinking about some business-related type stuff, some real estate-related ventures maybe, which is always a good thing to be in. But the coaching life is just not for everybody. And if it's for you, you love it. But if there's any part of you that just doesn't live it and breathe it, and maybe for Jake it would, I'm not saying, I literally don't know the answer to this. But if there's any part of you that doesn't live it and breathe it, the grind's just going to kill you because it's just so much. And we've talked about this before in this space about how these guys have to be glued to their phones, and it's text message, direct message, blah, 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 just over and over and over again. That's just the nature of being a college coach, and that is just not for everybody. I like putting my phone down. A lot of you know this. I don't really tweet very much. I try to respond back to folks who write to me, and sometimes I even kind of get behind doing that because when I'm at home, I like to put my phone down. And I know that's kind of old-fashioned or whatever else, but I like to spend time with my kids, and I'm not trying to be holier than that. I'm just saying that, I would not do well if you had to be tethered to your phone all the time. I just wouldn't do that. I have to have those moments when I can put it down, and I want to be, present somewhere else. And as a college football coach, it is not easy to do that. Matt Lucas told those stories about, Disney World or something like that? Like he's in line for the, whatever, and he's texting a recruit, which is just what you have to do because recruits, they don't operate on the same schedule that, I couldn't do Jeff Sintel's job. I could not do that. Where, you have to sort of be ready to interview a recruit when he has time for you. Well, recruits have time for you 10:30 at night. Well, I'm asleep at 10:30 at night. At least I'm, getting sleepy if nothing else. So, that's just kind of the nature of being a coach is you got to really want to do that. So maybe that is what he would want to do. And if he did, I think he could be a very good one. But that's got to be the life you kind of want. Brian Jones says, will you be pulling for Utah versus Florida? I sure will. You better believe it. I don't know what the Utes cheers are. I don't know what their fight song is, but we may actually have to find this out. We may have to kind of do a little studying on what one does to cheer for the Utes of Utah. Because we will definitely be cheering for them. Oh, by the way, happy birthday to Randy Hall, one of our great DawgNation.com commenters. Happy birthday to Randy Hall. It sounds like he's got a great lunch plan, which is good stuff. Scott Harris on the subject of Zion Logue and Tramel Walthour. In the case of Logue, I think he's going to be one of Georgia's more important players, assuming he stays healthy. I think that Walthour is probably a pretty big contributor there as well. I think you're probably right. Well, let's see what else. Brandon Griffin says Baker Mayfield's face in the Rose Bowl when he realized they had lost, so satisfying. It really was. And I hate to be this way, but I really hated him. I really, really hated him. And, probably still do, although he's totally irrelevant now, so it doesn't really matter. Although I guess he may start for the Panthers this year. But the point is, I hated Mayfield. I don't mind telling you that. Hated him. And so when he's doing all of the throat slash gesture and stuff like that, I just so reveled in that comeback there that day. And because listen, I saw some of the stuff that he was doing on the field prior to that game. Like he was doing these wide receiver routes, like he was pretending to be a wide receiver in some of the warm up stuff, and he was running the routes, running them really widely, running them wide, and kind of ending up in Georgia sideline, Georgia huddle. He just really was just trying to be an agitator prior to the game. And I saw this with my own eyes. I was I hate this dude, this guy. I mean, I hated him. So to see Georgia get that win, and listen, I can think of 3 instances. Baker, Young this past year, Tebow in 2007. To beat the Heisman Trophy winner in the year in which the trophy winner won the Heisman, that's a pretty big deal. Now, Florida in 2007 wasn't a great team, but that's a huge game. Beating the Heisman Trophy winner is a pretty big deal, despite the fact that it was a Rose Bowl win and a playoff, advancement to the national championship game. Just beating the Heisman Trophy winner, that's pretty significant. I mean, I don't really know. Are there other instances in which Georgia's beaten the Rays? I guess George Rogers in '80 would have been an example of this. I think somebody brought that up the last time I kind of mentioned this. I just think it's kind of cool to beat the Heisman Trophy winner. Not every Heisman Trophy winner is on a great team, but if you beat the Heisman winner, you've probably done something kind of cool, and that's kind of what that was. Randy Hall brings up a good point that the old Jake from State Farm, if nothing else, he would have definitely had the insurance company ad, probably for sure. Dogs only, making his feelings on Baker Mayfield very clear. Johnny Surf Dog says we beat the Heisman winner in January of 22. Yeah, we talked about that a moment ago. Bryce Young. Going to beat the Heisman Trophy winner again. You mean, January of 22. This is very confusing for me. Yes, in January of last year, we did beat Georgia did beat the Heisman Trophy winner. That's exactly right. We kind of mentioned that a moment ago. All right, on YouTube for a moment. Let's see what else. John Hendrick says nobody's close to MJ. If that MJ is Michael Jordan, absolutely. This is probably not a huge surprise to anybody who's watching right now. But in the eternal debate of Jordan versus LeBron, I am definitely Jordan, although I'm guessing this is in reference to today being – is today? Yeah, yesterday was 8/24 day, which is obviously kind of thought to be Kobe Bryant Day because of the number 8 and the number 24. I'm a big Kobe fan. I was a big Kobe fan in the feud versus Shaq. I never really liked Shaq as a player very much. Big Kobe. I was definitely team Kobe in terms of the Kobe-Shaq feud. And I've always liked Kobe far more than I liked LeBron. LeBron I've never really found to be all that likable. Raphael Wright says, welcome to the best place on earth for the show. I do love hanging out on YouTube here. Let's Go Brandon says the Florida Costco is selling the tickets. Yeah, I think we're going to try to do that maybe for the Golden Shoe tomorrow. Somebody sent that to me. We're going to try to do that. Biscuit said, did you see the Bama excuse coordinator got a raise for all of his good work this offseason? So there you go. Yeah, not only did Nick Saban get the new raise and extension, but the Bama excuse coordinator did there as well. You know it, pointing out this is factually true, that a lot of teams are doing the Costco thing. Oh, Lord heaven. All right, last time, so the alarm is going on. The last time this happened, it went off in 30 seconds. Do you mind if I wait 30 seconds? The fire alarm's going off. Michael says, are you leaving? All right, y'all, the fire alarm's going off. Huh? Okay, yeah. Well, let's just get off the air. That's fine. All right, so the last time this happened is total false alarm, and it stopped 2 seconds later, but the fire alarm is going off. So shout out to RS Andrews. We appreciate them being here. Well, don't leave yet because you're going to have to get us off the air. So appreciate them being here, everything else. So we'll see you tomorrow. I got to go. The fire alarm's going off. Sorry, y'all. This is fun. We'll see you tomorrow.